Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. He has been on a roll. He'll be with us Monday night. Oh, I'm sure it's going to go viral. Anyway, with his thoughts on, of course, full-time Trump stalker, Tweety Bird, and podcaster Gavin Newsom and his obsession with knee pads and President Trump. Take a look.
I think Gavin Newsom may be cracking up with some of these things he's saying. I think he may be in over his hairdo. And being on the national stage is very different than being governor of California with no signature achievements. But to say strange things like President Trump is a Tyrannosaurus Rex, what the hell does that mean? I could say Gavin Newsom is a brontosaurus with a brain the size of a walnut. And if you brought the knee pads, maybe that was for his meeting with Alex Soros. I don't know.
I honestly can't wait for Scott Bessent to be on Monday. Now, of course, Bessent is referring to the far-left Democratic mega donor Alex Soros, George Soros' son, who seems to have unfettered access to every major Democrat around the country, and with that, the control that you would imagine, including, of course, Gavin Newsom, seen here smiling ear to ear with this great, rich Democratic donor, 1%. In addition to comparing Newsom's brain to the size of a walnut, Bessent also compared the governor to, well, American Psycho Patrick Bateman and Sparkle Ken Barbie. In other words, Bessent is calling Newsom both unhinged, brainless, and I'll add to that soulless and completely incompetent, an empty suit with raw ambition, and along with his career as a full-time podcaster, Tweety Bird, psycho Trump stalker, and now world traveler, including Europe and everything, and even China, where he awkwardly tackled and then spanked, look, a young man during a pickup basketball game. Very nice of him. Anyway, has also been measuring the drapes at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue for quite some time. Unfortunately, in his quest for fame and power, Newsom forgot to show up for his day job as California's governor. Remember, Gavin, you were elected to that job. Or maybe he just doesn't have what it takes to be an effective leader, so he gave up. California is an absolute train wreck. Politico just described the budget as a nightmare. Meanwhile, entire neighborhoods in Los Angeles burned to the ground. People can't get a permit to rebuild their homes. Why? Because he's a climate change lunatic that doesn't believe in the science of forestry, didn't have the good common sense to ensure the fire hydrants and reservoirs actually had water for what are predictable California wildfires and Santa Ana winds. Now, few have been able to even start rebuilding because of state and local government regulations. Gavin hasn't lifted a finger. At the same time, city streets are completely lawless, riddled with open-air drug markets, homeless encampments, and who could forget California, also home to a human waste problem, unlike any other state. Take a look.
This is a map of San Francisco. There's a lot of plots on that. You may be asking, what is that plotting? Well, this is an app where they plot the human feces that are found on the streets of San Francisco. And you see how almost the whole thing is covered, because that is what has happened in one of the previous greatest cities this country's ever had. Human feces is now a fact of life, except when a communist dictator comes to town. Then they cleaned up the streets. They lined the streets with Chinese flags. They didn't put American flags there. They cleaned everything up. So they're willing to do it for a communist dictator, but they're not willing to do it for their own people.
All right, needless to say, businesses and people are leaving in droves. #1 migration state in the country. It's so bad that California lost a congressional seat for the first time ever. But it's not just Newsom's human waste crisis. California taxes are insane. For perspective, here is California's top income tax rate. That's at 13%. Right here, my free state of Florida, it's 0. Even the medium tax rate is super high at 6%, which is twice as high as most states. But that's not all. California also has a higher sales tax, the highest gas tax in the country, and the corporate income tax is almost double. California takes in more tax revenue by far than any other state in the country, and it's not even close. So where's all the money going? Why do they have these multi-billion-dollar deficits year in and year out under Gavin? Well, the answer, social services for illegal immigrants because the sanctuary state of California spends nearly $31 billion a year to feed and clothe and house and educate and provide health care, taxpayer funded, to California's massive population of illegal immigrants. But now, after bankrupting his state, driving Americans away from one of the most beautiful places on earth. I lived in California for 5 years in the 80s. Gavin Newsom wants a promotion?